Hey guys, my name is Nina Means. I'm the director for Austin Community College Fashion Incubator, and we are here back with Workshop Wednesday. I am so happy to come back to you to talk about the product development process. We've been going through a series of steps from concept to the design sketch meeting and what goes into that, and kind of understanding what changes in the design process to help you create an awesome collection. One of the things that we're going to be doing today is talking a bit more about what happens after that first prototype comes back. And so I'm going to give you a bit of a side-by-side visual of what it looks like whenever things may not come back exactly the way that you request. We had done a very lengthy series on technical design, really the tech pack, and what it means to create a technical package. And that's really what a designer will submit to the factory or sample room for the first time around in creating a particular style. So this isn't the production tech pack. It's not what is going to help you make thousands of pieces of something. It's literally going to be the one that gives you an idea of what that first sample actually looks like. Now, if you're paying attention to what we do here at the Fashion Incubator, we are huge proponents of fashion technology. And so our partner, Gerber Technology, is an incredible resource for emerging talent as well as established businesses whenever you're wanting to cut down that cost and cut down that time at the product development phase. So what we'll be doing is sharing with you here in the coming weeks, months, about how to utilize a lot of those technology systems in order to help you bring your product to market in an effective way, a much more targeted way, and to be able to actually reduce a lot of your cost up front in the product development process. In fashion, a lot of our waste happens during this time because we're iterating and perfecting and testing and trying new things. And so sometimes that can be a really huge challenge for our businesses to be able to overcome that, because you may not have enough resources to get through as many cycles and testing as you would like. But if you're utilizing the technology up front, what that allows you to do is to actually do a lot of that testing in the computer digitally before actually realizing that product in the market or actually having to see that product in hand. So things like making sure that your points of measure actually accomplish the style and attitude that we spoke about the last time whenever we're talking about concept and design, that it really reflects the kind of aesthetic that your customer is looking for from you, and that it just reflects what you as a designer want to see in the product to come to life in this next season. So this is a really great way for us to look at what happens in this next phase. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to remind us of where we are in our process. We're going to recap a little bit in the product development cycle. This is something that I use quite a bit when I teach this course in a 14-week, sessions. They're like 4-hour courses for 14 weeks. And we do a deep dive for intro and advanced content, specifically in product development, really helping our fashion students understand what happens at this phase. I've also taught it as an independent study, which I think is also a really great learning opportunity. You can try a few more things that are a bit more industry standard. So one of the things that I'm really passionate about in the product development process is really understanding not just how the aesthetics come out in your design, but how the resources come out in your design, utilizing materials that you already have. This is a sustainability measure, that we're not just going into new things all the time, that we're using what we have and building on what we have in order to create new product. Not letting things go to waste as much as we can possibly help it. So finding places for those things to exist. And really, it's a smart business move as well. Being sustainable in this space in that way really is, a really great way for you to not have things sitting in the corner of your warehouse or your workspace or your studio that are not turning income. All of your pieces should be generating some level of income for you. So I'm going to share my screen here. You'll see my screen pop up where we are looking at, let's see, our Acrobat. I'm going to share you. All right, so you should be seeing my screen. I believe that this is how we set it up the last time. If for some reason you're having a hard time with following along visually, we'll work on the placement here. But what I wanted you to get a chance to see is really this product development cycle, and getting a chance to see, that we've talked about concept, we jumped into design, we've sketched our ideas, we've thought about where in our assortment these things belong, and then we've gone to our first sketch review meeting. And one of the things that I shared with you before was that it's so important that at the sketch review meeting that you're thinking not just what you think is the most beautiful thing or what the next big trend is going to be, but where in the assortment these things belong. Is it a core product? Is it a core fashion product? Is it going to be your fashion special piece, or is it going to be that halo that I described as kind of the cherry on the top of your sundae, that gets people really excited about coming in to see the store? Is it the store window? Is it kind of that landing page on your website, or that really amazing Instagram shot that's just like, who is this brand? Amazing. But you also sell great t-shirts, right? So we got to have a core product. They may be really cool gray t-shirts, but they may be an additional piece that just helps you continue to sell product season after season. So we talked about the tech pass this last time, and what it was about, really kind of getting into the preparation of, preparing that tech pack for development. And then now we're on the other side of that. We're going to be talking about the first prototype, the first proto sample. So what I want to do is do a quick reminder of our sample flow. We talked about this before. We have the development during our sampling stages in our product development process, and that prototype or proto sample is the very first time we are seeing our style in real life, IRL. So it's so important for us to, get that first kind of clarity about what this actually means for the collection, if it actually makes sense, if we can move forward with it. And so what I wanted to do was to kind of remind you that this is our very first time seeing the sample. And then I want to remind you of our product assortment space. Kind of highlighted just a second ago, but visually, I think it helps to really cement the idea, is looking at the pyramid of having your core product at the bottom, your core fashion, your fashion, and your halo. And so this is really where we talked a bit more about products having a reason for existing in your collection and making sure you have a strong base that's going to give you good profit, that's not going to be over designed, and then having those wow pieces, as we just spoke about. So the next thing is, a lot of those things are kind of be driven a little bit more by money, right? Because it's what are the products that people are going to be trying from you for the first time. But it may also be those things that are like, hey, I'm really familiar with this brand and I trust them enough to go try that halo piece, or that halo piece is just so amazing that I don't care what their core product is. I really want to try that because that's going to really take my personal wardrobe up to the next level. So it may be in that bucket as well. So I want to spend a little bit of time talking about this with you guys today regarding the prototyping sample and what we typically do when the proto samples arrive. So let's say that we are designing a collection of blazers, and we put in our points of measure based on what we thought the fit needed to be. However, it may or may not have come back exactly the way that we requested. Some measurements may have been in tolerance, which is, within the range of what we said was acceptable for a particular measurement. And then other things may have been out of tolerance, which may have been out of range of what was acceptable or tolerable. What we are also looking at is, hold on just a second, is let's see. Give me just a second here. I'm gonna pause. See if we can pause. I'm gonna unshare. Okay. What we're gonna do is we're gonna keep going here. So what I wanted to do, sorry for the pause, we'll edit that out later. What we are going to do is go back to this lineup of our blazers. So what's really important here is for us to get a chance to talk about what happens whenever the styles come back in different ways. So say we're putting in a double-breasted white blazer. Now this double-breasted white blazer could come in a variety of ways. We may have asked for maybe like a horn button, which is kind of like, a bit of it literally looks like it's like a cut of a boar's horn or other, horns that are in. A lot of times these are faux. Okay, so don't, for the animal concerns. A lot of these are faux horn buttons that have been fashioned to look like some of those really beautiful striated shades of brown or shades of black. Sometimes they're Carozzo, which is kind of like almost like cut stone, where they've been drilled out really beautifully to be able to have something like a, kind of a statement button, but that isn't necessarily a high shine. You can add shine to them if you want. Um, but in my development tech pack, I would have specified exactly what kind of button I wanted. I would have specified what my waist measurements needed to be. I would have specified the shoulder points. I would have specified the length of the sleeves and the placement of the buttons. Clearly, I have three different white blazers here, but the customer is actually pretty different based on the fit of the jacket. And this is a brand defining moment. So, whenever you're looking at your prototype samples, you may have asked for the same measurement across the board. The, the point where the jacket crosses may be similar once it's closed. The points of where the buttons hit on the jacket once it's closed may be similar. However, the waist may be a bit more relaxed and gives you more of a easy vibe, or maybe it's more conservative. Maybe your waist point or your bust point is actually more narrow, and so maybe it gives you a bit more of an edgy downtown vibe. Or maybe uh, the shoulder pads that were inserted were within or without or not within your tolerance. So maybe they gave you a little bit more lift on the shoulder than what you requested because it's what they had lying around. Or maybe it's exactly what you requested and it's giving you not enough or too much shoulder in the silhouette. And so the attitude of how that comes across, you can even see the shoulder across these various styles that, one has a bit more of a slope to it. One feels a little bit more assertive, because it's a bit, higher. You've got one that's somewhere in between. And so based on the aesthetic of your customer, if your customer is more relaxed, and would wear her white blazer with a pair of jeans, but she still wants a hit of glamour with a gold button, you may be saying, okay, the one on the far left is appropriate. But if your customer may be a bit more conservative and doesn't really want to show their waist, but wants a tailored, clean look and would actually wear it as a full suit, that may be, the one in the middle you see has a bit more difference in that. And the buttons aren't making a statement, they're kind of blending into the design of the jacket. But then if you go to the last jacket here, you see that this jacket actually has a bit more shape and, almost being worn as a dress. And so this has a very different vibe to it altogether. The model feels different. The attitude feels different. She has the high shine button, not as many, but it definitely has a different attitude. The length is different. The cut is different. You even see some of those princess lines that are kind of creating a bit more feeling of a dress as opposed to a blazer. We can do princess lines on blazers. Of course we can, but sometimes you don't necessarily take out as much shape. You see a lot more shape being defined throughout the body on the blazer on the right. And so you can clearly see that you've got three very distinctive customers in a white double-breasted blazer. This can happen on the same tech pack by accident. But it's really the job of the designer, the design team, to decide what is appropriate and what isn't appropriate. And at the proto review, the very first thing that's going to happen is that the prototypes will come in. The designer will get a chance to see it first, hopefully, depending on the way your brand is set up. Typically, the designer gets a chance to review that sample first, to get a chance to measure it. Sometimes this is your technical designer, but you get a chance to measure it against what you requested, to make notes of what is in and outside of tolerance. and then to take note of what you requested in your bill of materials. And so what you'll do is you'll literally go down the list and say, okay, is this the fabric I requested? Or did the factory substitute the fabric for something similar? Is this the um, what else is here, and so what we are doing is we would want to make sure that we are getting a chance to communicate those things to we want to communicate these things to the factory after we've got a chance to actually take a moment to review those details. And so this is really key for us. We find this exceptionally important to be able to manage ourselves and manage our content appropriately, because what it's helping us to do is always define the brand aesthetic, always define the customer. And I will tell you, this is really where a lot of battles are fought and lost, or fought and won, because a lot of times, sometimes if you are not a stickler for the details, the factory will assume that what they did was okay. And it's not because they're trying to like slip things in on you necessarily. But everyone is there to try to make the process as easy as possible. And so if it's more efficient for them to do something a certain way, this is going to be the time that they're going to test that opportunity in the prototype or even further down the line. So what we want to do is to, make sure that you go through line by line and to get a chance to call out very specifically what things fit in and what things don't fit into your entire schema. So like if it's, the buttons were substitute buttons, but these are not what we wanted. We are going back to spec or going back to the bill of material. We need to source these buttons, or we need to find the right buttons, or the right buttons need to arrive in factory for the next round of sampling. So it's really key that you provide them exactly what it is that you are looking for. And if they're helping you to find it, to give them feedback on whether or not they did a good job on locating what it is that you need. You can always do this in a very polite and respectful way. Everyone's working, and they may have said, hey, we weren't able to find it fast enough for the time that you needed the sample. So this was the best we were able to do. We always say, thank you, well noted. However, when we move forward, we need to make sure to find this. And most places are happy to oblige, and knowing that we're all working together towards a common goal. They want to sell the product, they want to produce it. You want them to produce it, and you want them to produce it on time and as your specifications request. So everyone's working together. So if you go into it with the expectation that we're all doing our best, that typically helps with the relationship building. However, you are going to be responsible as the designer, as the brand, to hold the line of what's appropriate for your aesthetic. There may be times when your requests are outside of the kinds of things that are typically requested at that particular factory. I had a similar situation with that, where I was developing a pair of like silk joggers, like there's like a silk jogging pant. And the person that I was working with on the development was not used to the shape of the seat of the pants. So like if you pull on a pair of pants, and depending on your waist and hip ratio, what happens in the pattern is significantly different depending on whether or not you have a lot of hips or not a lot of hips. Okay. And so there's not a right or wrong way on it, right? I mean, there's not a right or wrong answer on the body type, but if you're trying to provide a product that is for women with more hips, then the measurements may not be what people are used to seeing if they typically do a different kind of product. Let mama help. um, so, um, so it may be something that people are not used to seeing in that space. And so this is a really key moment to be able to define for them what it is that's actually needed based on what you understand about your customer. So this is really where the communication takes place. It's not a time to take offense. It's not a time to assume that they're not able to do what you're requesting. It's just time to make a very clear stand on communication, so that whenever your product does come out of the first review and it's time to actually go to fittings, that you're going to be more successful and you're going to make a lot less waste because you took the time to communicate what's needed up front. So this component of the prototype is very, very key to make very, very clear comments. I've done so many prototype reviews with factories, and I think that what we would probably do, we don't really have enough time in this context to go over all of the kinds of comments that I would make to a factory, but you know, I'll tell you right now, what I would typically do is I would take a picture of the garment on a body or a dress form. And then I would literally make marks all over it in a Sharpie or in Illustrator, and I would draw on top of it. And I would point out every single point that needs to be updated in the next round. Because if I don't show them on the garment, it's possible that in the list, as I will also make a list, that it could be missed. And so I want them to be able to cross-reference the list and then what they actually see, because guys, still, we're in such a visual industry. A picture is worth 1,000 words, literally. Like if you can just show your factory what it is that you're trying to do, you don't necessarily have to be physically present, but clearly, as you guys are seeing me share these 3 different blazers, 3 different double-breasted white blazers that are pretty similar in length. I mean, if you look at it where that blazer is hitting against their fingertips, it's pretty similar in length, but I have a very different vibe from every single one of these blazers. I've got gold buttons and a more relaxed vibe. I've got, it's closed here, but it definitely looks a bit more pop, like it's a bit more conservative. And then I've got this other one here where she's wearing it over shapewear. And it definitely has more of this, like, sexy is not a bad word when we talk about the clothing. We're not going to talk about the people, but it definitely has more of an alluring, sexy vibe. So these are all, but they're all the same product, right? We kind of say it's a white blazer, it's a white double-breasted blazer, but it's clearly a different customer. So it's key that you get a chance to really define what your product is going to be in these spaces. So what I want to do is I'm actually going to stop sharing my screen here. Maybe I'll go back to our original image. So just to kind of remind you where we are. The first proto is really key. So concept, we talked about that. Design, we've sketched out all of our ideas. The sketch review meeting and how important that is, and to get your ideas across to the design team or to even edit within yourself. I have a bulletin board that I'll literally throw all of my sketch ideas up. And then I will literally think about, okay, what happens in my essentials or my core group? What happens in my core fashion group? What's happening in these spaces? I'm going to show you that while I'm saying it so it's not so tricky. But, what's happening in these various product assortment spaces for my sketch review. And so that whenever it's time for me to go into reviewing my actual prototypes, I'm actually able to now say, okay, did this get across what I intended? Some brands are literally going to make an entire collection out of blazers. So instead of me having a white single-breasted blazer, I may actually have, say, this one in the middle that's got this amazing detail at the pocket. There's these beautiful, like, kind of chandelier chains. That may be my halo blazer, right? And then because it's going to be like my higher price point, it's going to be the one that's going to be, a bit more costly for me to do. Maybe these buttons are actually real Carozo, where they're actual real stone that's been sliced and drilled perfectly. These are all things, or maybe this is a silk twill material, whereas the others are done in, a poly crepe, which is a completely different experience. So even as you're seeing how these jackets hang, you're seeing some differences in the way, like, if you look at this lapel, there's a little bit and this edge of the jacket, there's a bit of waving here. And so that may indicate some level of how the fabric is draping, how it's been cut, and then just what the material is in general. And so you've got some variation in terms of price point just by changing the fabric. A lot of times your fabric in that first proto review, we're going to evaluate for cost. And so a lot of times your fabric is going to drive that cost. So if for some reason you're having a hard time making production because it's too expensive to actually bring to market, the first place that we typically look is the fabric and say fabric too costly here. And then when we look at the trim and some other components, or do I have too much trim? So these are all things that could possibly add to that. And so we will definitely make sure that we create and share those things with you as we go along, to kind of share a little bit more about material sourcing and how that's going to affect your product development process. But what we want to do first is kind of just walk you through where these samples show up in your product development process and make sure you understand how that comes to be. So we're going to wrap up here. Again, my name is Nina Means. I'm the director for Austin Community College Fashion Incubator. And we're really, excited about all the things that we are bringing out in this space. It's really, stop sharing with you. We are really so happy that we're able to create these moments for you because we think that this is really going to help you take your business to the next level. So feel free to reach out to us. This is a pre-recorded message. So if you drop your questions in the comments, I do read those and I do respond. So whenever you get a chance, or if you have questions, feel free to drop your questions there. Definitely subscribe, and we will catch up with you guys soon. So again, we are on all of our social media channels at ACC Fashion Incubator. On Twitter, though, it's at ACC Fashion Incube. And then whenever you join our email list, that's fashion.incubator@austincc.edu. We will keep you up to date on all the exciting things that we've got going on. The Macy's virtual series starts tonight. We're very excited. And so you guys can keep up with all the incredible things that are coming down the pike here at the ACC Fashion Incubator. Again, my name is Nina Means. I'm the director here at ACC Fashion Incubator, and we are so glad to have you here for Workshop Wednesdays. We'll see you next time. Okay.